actually in the screen?
Yep, right in the bullseye middle. And it's recording. I don't like.
Why?
Because you're not smiling or anything.
Well, I'm not ready to shoot yet. Hi everyone, we're back for another video, and well, I guess this one's kind of not really exactly a video, it's kind of more an audio with picture overlays. We'll go with that. Anyway, if any of you caught the video from earlier where I have a trailer hitch mounted cargo carrier, and I decided to put some lights on the back of that just so when we were running down the freeway, especially with how crazy drivers are here in Maryland and DC metro area, that nobody would run into that thing, because it does stick out probably just about 3 feet from the rear bumper, and if you're not really on top of it, you might not notice that there's a projection past the vehicle. So the factory reflectors that they had only provided, I didn't feel super safe with. Anyhow, that got me thinking about another project, which is what we're going to be looking at today. These are exactly the same lamps that I used on that cargo carrier, and I've attached them. I ordered up a second set and went ahead and attached those to the basket on top of the truck. I had seen a Jeep about a month or so ago, maybe, that had lamps very similar to this. I don't think they were quite as tall, if I remember right, but anyway, he had some mounted up high, and I've seen some trucks with headache racks, what they call the protection racks that go on the rear window that keep something from sliding in the bed and crashing through the rear window and hitting the occupants of the cab, therefore creating a headache. So that's where they've kind of earned their name as headache racks. Anyhow, so let me give you a quick rundown on what I did. Like I said, I ordered the same lamps, and I went over to my local Lowe's and picked up a Carlon pole box, which is usually used for plastic conduit, which actually for this purpose turned out just about perfect. The half-inch pole box is now mounted on top of the third brake lamp. I just bored a hole through there so that the one spigot fitting, I think they're usually called, the round projection, the little drum there, can push down through the lamp, therefore allowing me to bring my wiring into the cab without actually drilling holes through the sheet metal, which I really wasn't in favor of. And then in the second frame, you'll see right after the Carlon box there, you'll see the plug-in socket assembly that I purchased from King Jeffrey of Amazon World Land there. It's a 5-pin that you solder together yourself. It just comes basically with just those two halves, and you fabricate your own harness, which for me is really no big deal. And that actually went pretty nicely. What I ended up doing was taking that plug-in socket with me over to the store and matching it up against the Carlon box. And I was very fortunate. I was hoping in my head that this would work out. Very fortunate that socket diameter was extremely close to the size of the conduit, which is designed to plug into that pole box. And so therefore, I just finished all of my solder work on that particular socket, and then just epoxied it directly into the horizontal opening on the box, and that took care of that part. So I then proceeded to run the wiring down through the C-pillar and drilled a small hole through the floor pan right next to the rear seat under the carpet. And I figured that would be an area that would be safe. It wouldn't get kicked or anything like that. It's not in a traffic area where people's feet are. It's right next to the seat, so it's very well protected. And put a grommet in there. Ran the harness along the bottom side of the truck on the inside facing of the frame, where it's nice and well protected. And there's actually some factory harness looming in that area too. So I just followed that path all the way to the rear. And if you look at the next set of photos there, that is the rear harness from the driver's side left-hand tail lamp assembly. So what I did there was took a very sharp knife and just skinned the wire. And what that means is that you actually cut a section of the insulation away without actually hacking all the way through the copper. So the wire stays intact. You can then take the piece that you are adding to it and just do a spiral wrap around the existing copper, get that basically wrapped by finger, get it as tight as you can, and then go ahead and lay in your solder. And after it cools a little bit, you can either put your shrink wrap or some electrical tape, whichever is your preference there. That was pretty much the entire assembly. Now, why did I have to go through all of these extra gymnastics when the other lamps on the roof rack itself, which I detailed way back in the early construction of the truck? Well, so I'm glad you asked that question. Let me answer that question. The lamps that are on the roof rack are basically permanent. They're stuck on there, so to speak. They could physically be removed, but there's really no reason to. They just travel around with the truck, and so that wiring is actually coming through the third brake lamp as well, but doesn't have any socketing or anything. The wiring just goes through a grommet assembly directly through the brake lamp. So this one, since this is a basket which is only held on by some clamps, and I may not possibly always want to have the basket in place on the truck, it is about 5 inches shorter without it, which makes it easier to fit into some garages under some circumstances. So if we were traveling or anything of that nature, and I wasn't worried about the cargo capacity, I could always take that off, reduce its height. Of course, you can see the problem there is that now I have something which is hardwired into my truck. How am I going to remove the basket without doing a whole bunch of work? So to answer that question, that's just a little extra piece that we have here, this socket and plug assembly. And so that's actually sitting sideways now as it's on the truck. You can see the little blue ferrules. So that just basically screws together with a retaining ring. And so what I did is I just went ahead and filled the plug side with electrical dielectric grease, which is designed to protect terminals from corrosion. It's used a lot in marine applications because of all the salt water. It can be used on anything that has an electrical connection regardless of its environment, and it's completely non-conductive, so there's no possibility of it causing any trouble with electrical shorts. It just prevents water intrusion and prevents corrosion. So this plug and socket assembly does have O-rings at each one of its interfacing connector points, but I went ahead and added all of that dielectric grease anyway, just to make sure that even if there were any water intrusion that did manage to make its way in, the water would cause no trouble, because it's certainly not going to mix with that. Everyone pretty much knows that water and oil don't get along, so this is just a thick silicone type of based grease. So it's basically the same. Water will not permeate it, and it will not be hydrophilic. It doesn't absorb any moisture as well. So it'll keep everything nice and dry. So anyway, thank you for your time. That concludes this video, and until next time, there's still a big world out there. Thankfully, the Wuhan pandemic is over for the most part, and most restrictions have been lifted. So unless you're in a place that's still keeping things a little weird, pretty much we're free to go back to enjoying our pre-2020 world. So get out there and get her muddy. That big world is still waiting to be explored. Until next time.